Exactly. This is an emulator of a Commodore PET.
Okay.
This computer was made in 1977.
Yeah.
And this is one of the original 8-bit machines. It had a lot of applications in business, but of course people used it for gaming as well. And I started developing this game on the actual PET, but my power supply went bad, so I had to finish it on the emulator. But the game is pretty unique. So the way the game works, you pick your difficulty level, and you select the number of cities which are infected when the game starts. The whole idea of the game is to find a cure before all of the cities become infected. So initially, the cities that are infected are 11 and 4. You can see the cities by going to the report page, and you issue commands in plain English. So here I see Denver is infected, Phoenix is infected. If I type map, I go back to the map page. I can quarantine the city, and I can either type in the word Denver or I can type in the number 4. So here I've got Denver quarantine, and that'll minimize its risk of an outbreak. But the whole idea is really to find a cure for the bioterror disease vector before all the cities get infected. So in order to do that, you conduct research. Now the cure code is a random series of numbers and letters picked by the computer. So I'm going to research this cure code right now, and I hit return. The game reloads, and it shows me that the letter F, I guessed, is actually part of the cure code, except it's not in the right place. So I would write down on a piece of paper the letter F so that I can remember it while searching the cure. If I try to conduct research a second time, it'll tell me that my research is done for the day. So, because my research level is 1, I'm only allowed to research 1 time per day. So I have to go to a new day. Now every time we go to a new day, there's a risk of an outbreak. My difficulty level is low, so there probably won't be an outbreak right off the bat. But then I could do research again. And I left off with G, I'll go H, I, J, K, L, I, N, O. And none of those letters are part of the cure. So I can also upgrade my research. And now that I've upgraded my research level is 2. Now everything I do costs money. And in this case, resource units. It costs resource units to plan a quarantine. It costs money every single day for the quarantine.
Keep going, I'm sorry.
And it costs money or resource units to upgrade the research level. But since I've upgraded my research level, I can conduct research again today. Now I can do research twice a day, since my research level is 2. So I continue with the random letters and numbers. And I know that the letter T is part of the cure code now. And so I would continue on this vein until I guessed all the letters of the cure code and guessed which order they're in. Now I'll go new day. Another day goes by. No outbreaks yet, but that's okay. But another day is gone, so I can conduct more research today. And in this case, I know the letter T is part of the cure code, so I'm going to just research nothing but the letter T, and it'll show me where the letter T exists. And here that it's a heart, so I know the letter T is actually the 3rd character of the cure code. So you would just continue this until you had actually found a cure. Once you find a cure, you would cure a city by typing in cure Denver, for example. But in this case, I can't because the cure hasn't been found yet. There's a full tutorial on YouTube. It's like 25-minute tutorial. Way too long to probably do for a 15-minute documentary.
Yeah, sure.
But what I like about this is that even though the 8-bit computers are breaking down, You can still run the software on an emulator. And so here I'm using a Mac computer, which is actually running Windows 7, which has an emulator for the PET 2001. So I've got a great piece of hardware running Windows, which is running a PET emulator.
Right.
And the emulator is called WinVice. And with the WinVice emulator, you can run all kinds of Commodore applications. There's a Commodore 128 emulator, 64. Every version of the PET is on WinVice. And you can download that at winvice.org. And it's all free, including the game that I built. So a 2011 game built for a 1977 computer.
Right. So what inspired you to want to make it for an old computer and make it sort of harder for people to kind of jump through hoops in order to play it? Like you said, if you could just make a game for the iTunes App Store, they could have it, but as it is, they can't have it on there because of the emulator.
That's right. Yeah.
So like, what made you want to do it on such a sort of a difficult to play piece of hardware or software?
Just purely nostalgia.
Yeah.
This computer is one of the first computers I ever laid hands on when I was younger. And the first computer I ever owned was a Commodore 64. So I learned how to write Commodore BASIC at the age of 14, and I'm still writing software today. That's my professional job. For me, this is like my dad being interested in classic cars. He grew up with 57 Chevys, and he still loves to see that car today. I grew up with Commodore computers, and I still love to see those machines today. For me, I bought this PET computer off of Craigslist, but it had no software for it. And so I had this game concept, which I tried to build when I was a kid, but I didn't have the skill to do it. So I got bored with the idea, and I just let it go for 25 years. But then as an adult, I had more knowledge about programming, and I used that to build this game only because I wanted a fun game to play on a computer that had no software for it. And that's how I found the whole the Vice scene, and lots of.
What's the Vice scene?
The Vice scene is the Vice emulator.
Okay.
So it's viceteam.org. Yeah. But there are emulators for lots of things. You can buy Apple emulators if you're an Apple guy. If you're a TRS-80 guy, you can get a TRS-80 emulator, and so on. So
I used to play Tetris on those in math class back in the day myself.
Exactly. In fact, like MAME Arcade, you can run all of the old classic stand-up arcade games on a PC, and it's the actual ROM. You're playing the actual game just on modern hardware through an emulator.
So you said you had this idea 25 years ago?
Yeah, when I was a kid.
Was it still the the bioterrorism?
The idea when I was a kid was actually more of a war games type of thing. I loved the Matthew Broderick movie, of course, War Games. All of us kids loved that movie. But I was most intrigued with the map that they had, and so I tried to build that map on my Commodore 64 without using graphics, just using the graphic characters on the keyboard, which are called PET-ski graphics. The Commodore's own version. It's an extended character set of the ASCII character set. And I wanted to hold the issue commands because that was the way that the movie was progressed.
Right.
In the movie, he actually asked the computer to play a game, or the computer asked him to play a game. And he said global thermonuclear war. He typed the whole thing out. And it seemed so cumbersome to actually type in research and the cure code. But using the keyboard is actually part of the fun of the game, especially when you look at the keyboard on the old PET computer. So for me, it was a combination of that and a board game that I've seen called Pandemic, which is more of an infection type of a game where you have to fly around from city to city and treat the infection as we go. But in my game, I came up with the idea of find the cure. There were lots of ideas I wanted to put in the game, but I just didn't have the memory to do it. The computer that I have is only 8K of memory, so when I was building this game, I really wanted it to run in that 8K limitation. So I left out things I wanted, like quarantine riots, you know, and a lot of these things I built and then ran out of memory and had to take them out. So there's probably 30 versions of this game on my computers at home that all have different aspects of the game. At one point you had to send research teams to the cities in order to conduct research, but that was too costly with the memory, so I had to find other ways to make the game fun. And I probably had 100 hours of development time in it.
It seems like the theme of it is real timely. I feel like there's been a whole bunch of indie games that I've seen like that deal with sort of like global or global bioterrorism and stuff.
Exactly.
What is it about that made you? Because like you said, you had the idea for war games,
well,
but then it became bioterrorism. How did it become bioterrorism?
I actually saw a YouTube video about a Russian scientist that was essentially a biological engineer. I mean, he produced diseases that were incredibly deadly. I read about an island that the United States used for testing anthrax that was infected for years, maybe 40 years, and has only recently been opened up for any kind of public access.
Yeah.
And so all of these modern things, like global thermonuclear war from the movie War Games, is really a relic of the Cold War, and that doesn't really fit our modern time. I think we're more worried about biological terror than anything else. As far as thermonuclear war, and we've seen it with the anthrax infections to the post office after 9/11. So these are modern problems, and so it all just kind of came together. It's always hard to say exactly where an idea came from, but all of the ideas came from various things: movies, books, board games, news, politics, YouTube videos, and so all of it kind of rolled up into one game.